In 2019, the leading Hamas political leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, said the following: "If not for Iran's support for the resistance in Palestine, we would not have obtained these capabilities. Indeed, our Arab nation has deserted us. Our nation has deserted us in difficult moments, while Iran has supported us with weapons, equipment, and expertise." What do they mean the Arab world abandoned them? Arab states began to realize already when Sadat went to Jerusalem in 77 that Arab national interests, individual geographic, territorial interests, are more important than a commitment to an ideology which said we first have to liberate Palestine before we do anything else. Sadat went to Jerusalem because he needed an agreement with Israel in order to get Sinai back. He didn't want one. His national interest came first, and in 94, Jordan's national interest came first. And so did Bahrain and the UAE. And their embrace of the state of Israel was an embrace that said, we will accept you because you're strong, or we will accept you because you have technology, or we will accept you because we want you to share with us what you know. October 7th made us realize that just because a country is recognizing you and accepting you and is making a transactional agreement with you, that doesn't mean they've transformed their disaffection for you into love. And don't tell me it's the settlements, and don't tell me it's the settlers, and don't tell me it's the judicial overhaul. Don't get lost in the weeds here. This has to do with, can we sustain a Jewish state in the middle of the Muslim world for another 75 years, and what will it take for us to do that? We have to say to ourselves, what are we going to do to change the mindset of our peers, of our children, and our grandchildren, who are willing to walk through the streets of Brooklyn like they did today and shout from the river to the sea? Occupation does not mean lands taken in the '67 war. Occupation means Israel's very existence. So I'm asking you, first of all, to come to grips with reality. Doesn't mean we don't want a negotiated settlement. That's not what I'm saying. This is not the moment. This is not the moment. So what are Israel's goals? To remain sovereign as a Jewish state with self-determination, working against fascist ideology, its national resilience, the need to rebuild deterrence, to restore or reestablish control over its own destiny. Hamas has to be eliminated, and its governing structure. And we can't temporize with it. And we can't get caught up by the international pictures that will be displayed to us, that will be shown to us about a bombing that takes place, which is horrendous against any civilian population. I was interviewed on Chinese national radio, English broadcast. The interviewer asked me, isn't it horrendous what Israel is doing in Gaza? I said, do you think what Israel's doing in Gaza would have occurred on October 8th if events hadn't occurred on October 7th? Let's get to the core of this. Let's get to the basis. Let's take a look at what transpired. Don't lose sight of how this unfolded. And as the weeks and the months go on, the memory will begin to deceive, and we'll begin to forget, and we'll begin to say it's not important. Well, it is important. There's still 229 people who are being held hostage, and Hamas is holding back their exchange. They're negotiating with the United States and the international community as if it is some market. Jews in the diaspora, we have to stay harnessed to Israel, and we have to have a response that transcends today and tomorrow and takes us into 2024 and beyond. Hamas's objectives were clear. Kill Jews, generate a massive Israeli response, have the international community come down hard on Israel in the court of public opinion, and when you get back to it, kill some more Jews. Derail as long as possible the acceptance of the state of Israel in the Middle East as a legitimate sovereign state. Remind secular Arab states, Jordan, Egypt, and others, North Africa, that Islamic ideology has merit in the extreme sense. In the extreme sense. And demonstrate that the great Satan, the United States, and the little Satan, Israel, are entwined together, and Israel is an artificial entity. How many of us sat and said, we can kick the can down the road, we'll play Gaza off for the West Bank, or we'll play the West Bank off for Gaza, we'll play the PA off against Hamas. It's a game that can go into the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, fifth quarter, sixth quarter, without adjudicating the issue of what do you do about Palestinians who want to run their own affairs. I don't know if it was an abundance of hubris. Religious ideology cannot be purchased. You can't say, bring X number of Palestinians in from Gaza and work inside Israel, and if they earn X number of dollars, and it's 3 and 4 times more than they can work in the Gaza Strip, then they will forget about their ideology. You can't buy ideology. Was someone going to buy off your religious belief? You can't do that. The Zionists in the 1930s thought they could. They actually believed if the Zionists could produce a viable economy and Palestinians could be employed, they might forget that their nationalism and Zionism are in direct conflict. In Western liberal democracies, are we capable of understanding that people can be motivated by religious ideology, not only what they read, not only what they say, but they will actually do and act upon what they say? Do we really have an ability to absorb a reality that says people will promote a religious thought that advocates the killing of another person, and they will actually do it? That's what happened on October 7th. We thought Hamas was rational. We thought if they would take care of their people, they would just stay in control of this enclave. We have to get rid of mindsets. Don't assume unqualified acceptance. Don't be mesmerized by transactions. Be judicious. Read. Digest. Beware of bogus reporting. The media ecosystem, rumors, videos, denials, embarrassments are all meant to disconnect supporters of the state of Israel with the state. That's what BDS is. And that's what BDS has been for 25 years. To disconnect Jews in the United States or in the diaspora with their support for the state of Israel, because if they undermine Jewish support in the United States, they'll undermine Israel's most important international supporter, economic supporter, and military supporter. That's why the physical attack is an element of the psychological and the verbal attack, which has been going on for a quarter century. What will we do with this event as we teach it to the next generation? Are we going to turn this in our Jewish schools, in our congregational schools, in our synagogues, and in our national Jewish organizations into one more Yom, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaShoah, Yom HaAtzmaut? Is October 7th just going to be a day of commemoration? Or are we going to do something about what happened on October 7th? Are we going to help our kids understand their identity? Help them understand they don't have to be afraid about taking their Mogen David and wearing it outside rather than inside as they walk through campus. And the only way you can be prideful is if you know your own story and you're not afraid to learn it, even with the warts. This is a memory moment for the Jewish people. A memory moment. And don't depend upon the synagogue. Don't depend upon the rabbi. Don't depend upon AJC or ADL or Hadassah or any other national organization. You have got to do it yourself with your own kids and with your own grandkids. Do something Jewish. Teach them something about the state of Israel. And do it regularly. Don't do it just once a year on Israel Independence Day. You can't learn about Ben Gurion when a kid is 17. I did not learn about George Washington when I was 17. I learned about the cherry tree when I was 4. It's important that we create memory moments in their attachments. That's absolutely critical. And that when they come back, we talk to them about it. We ask them to talk to their peers about it. And we don't just isolate it, well, they went on a 10-day mission, well, so what? It's like saying Kiddush on Friday night. You just don't do it once. You do it every Friday night. And you light candles. You say Kiddush. You say the blessing over the challah. Then you do it again next week. And then you do it again the week after. Learning is continuous. And we in North American Jewry have not been teaching it to the next generation, not for 5 years or 15 years or 25 years, but for more than 50 years. Israeli kids, too, have got to learn their own story and be prideful of it and don't run away from it. And do it with passion, do it with zeal, and do it with accuracy. Do it with accuracy, not exaggeration. My life for 44 years was spent as a teacher at Emory University. I taught undergraduates mostly. Kids would walk into my class, and the mandatory requirement was they had to leave their ideology at the door. You couldn't bring your ideology into my classroom. I don't care if you went to Ramaz or you were the granddaughter of a PLO executive committee member. Because we just studied sources, and we had kids not learn a narrative, we had kids learn history. I went to Michigan for a PhD. I did not take a course in the Palestinian narrative. I didn't take a course in the British Empire narrative. And I didn't take a course in the Zionist narrative. Now when you go to campuses and you take courses, professors are standing there and they're telling you exactly what they're going to teach you because it's in the syllabus. And unless a kid does the due diligence and finds out that this person is going down a really disastrous path, a kid has got to call the teacher out or just decide not to take the class. And don't take the class because the professor gives you an A and the professor has a history of giving A's. How many times did I have students walk into my office in the history building at Emory and say, Professor X in Y department is giving out A's and is preaching only Palestinian history and is berating anyone who stands up for Israel in 47 to 49. 3 times in a span of 5 years, I had to go to their department chair and say, if this doesn't stop, I will go to the dean and I will go to the president. And finally, the second time it stopped, only to start again after I retired in 2022. To walk across Emory campus last week and hear the phrase, from the river to the sea, wow. And to hear and see the proper reaction from the Emory University president about saying this will not be tolerated on the Emory campus. The drift to the left on university campuses in the United States started about 30 years ago. It has become relentless. I'm talking about taking social justice into the classroom and blaming someone for an event when the individual professor may not have known or does not know the origins of the event. If your kids or your grandkids are going to school, They got to make good choices. They got to make great choices. Because if you're spending $50,000 or $60,000 a year, you're spending $30,000 a semester. And for every course, you're spending $7,500. And that doesn't include the activities fee and all the other things it takes to go to a private school. $7,500 divided by 25 is $300 a lecture hour. You want a grandkid to spend $300 on a lecture hour from someone who is pouring propaganda into them? Really? I don't think so. So all of us at different levels have got to respond. We've got to be aware of mindsets. We've got to be aware of the concept. We've got to be aware of wanting to be loved, because that's something we've always sought in the normalization of the Jewish people. We wanted to be accepted. And don't be blindsided by acceptance, because it may not be acceptance. If you kill a pig kosher style and follow kashrut, it doesn't make the pig kosher. We have an obligation to the other half of world Jewry who lives in the state of Israel, because we cannot afford to have a calamity befall the state of Israel as it befell the Jewish world from 39 to 45. There are many mechanisms that you can use in order to stay connected doing something Israeli or doing something that identifies with the state of Israel. And if you have the ability, I would suggest that you think about, at some point in time over the next 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 years, is take yourself to Israel and volunteer for 2 or 3 weeks somewhere, someplace. Do something, if you're capable. And we have to think bigger and broader and deeper and longer. If we don't take this as a learning moment in 75 years of Israel's existence, then we will be the worst for it, and so will our children, and so will our grandchildren. I mean it. This was the worst 3 weeks of my Jewish life. We have to act. We have to embrace. We have to be purposeful. We have to be diligent. We have to be repetitive. We have to be proud. And we have to move together as we move individually. It's mandatory. So we get to the second 75 years for the state of Israel. Thank you very much.